Now to the bad news. Where are these weapons going? So all of those weapons that the United States is sending to Ukraine have been disappearing faster than ever before. They're winding up in the hands of some really bad dudes. And I've spoken to military sources who tell me that less than 10%, according to their reporting, less than 10% of the weapons sent to Ukraine are actually winding up in the hands of Ukrainian soldiers for use against Russia. Almost all of them are being sold or shipped off. They're being sold in the black market or being rerouted. And so you have a lot of guys on the front lines who are just sitting there saying, we don't know where these weapons are going. We're not getting them. We're dying out here. We have no weapons. We have no ammunition. And so all of this stuff we're hearing about is going nowhere. Now, according to this morning, we have Finland is out with an explosive report on all of those weapons being sent to Ukraine. This report comes from the NBI, which is Finland's Federal National Bureau of Investigation. And it was reported in Finland National Public Broadcasting. But Finland is saying that these weapons are going outside of Ukraine and are flowing into countries like Finland. And here is this guy. So here, this guy on your screen here, this is Detective Superintendent Krister Algren. And he says weapons shipped by various countries to Ukraine have also been found in Sweden, Denmark, and the Netherlands. 3 of the world's largest motorcycle gangs, he says, are part of a much larger international organization. They're active in Finland. One of these is the Bandidos MC, which has a unit in every major Ukrainian city, he says. We know that contacts and routes are being warmed up so that they're in place. Basically, so these criminal gangs are getting access to the weapons that you as taxpayers are paying for.
And it wouldn't be that hard, considering that CBS and CNN have both been able to confirm that when these weapons are shipped across the border into Ukraine, often they go in civilian cars, not, military vehicles that are there to take sort of meticulous notes and check off which is going where, but that even civilians are able to just pull up like a drive-through, get some weapons and drive off.
Now, Finland says, hey, we're going to start increasing border checks. Yeah, now's a good time to start doing that. So all these weapons are flowing across the border.
Good idea.
In these civilian cars. Hey, what do you got in your trunk back there? Oh, you got some of those Ukrainian weapons? Ukraine has received a large volume of weapons, and that's good, he says, Algren says, but we're going to be dealing with these arms for decades and pay the price here in Finland. So again, they're going to have to be tracking all of these things for years, and it's going to come back to bite them in the butt many, many years later.
Like Afghanistan.
Oh, yeah, like Afghanistan.
And Saudi Arabia. Go ask them how they handled the flooding of weapons for war.
You brought up the CNN piece. And of course, yes, back a number of months ago, CNN had reported back in April. What happens to weapons sent to Ukraine? We don't know, the U.S. says. The White House officials even warned CNN on the record. They spoke on the record, without their names. We have fidelity for a short time, they said. When it enters the fog of war, we have almost zero fidelity. It drops into a black hole, and you have almost no sense of where all of these weapons go after a short period of time. Now,
which is truly unacceptable when you think about how RFID is used to track our groceries and not weapons.
Radio frequency. What is RFID? It's the
radio frequency identification.
Yeah.
Or there's several technologies that can track items like this, but there's no, there's the blockchain. There's I can think of 5.
We have air tags, for crying out loud, to track our luggage when Delta loses your bags, right? So and now of course some airlines, was it Southwest?
I thought it was Continental. Is that even an airline anymore? I don't know.
Was it Pan Am? No, I think it was Southwest Airlines was banning the use of air tags.
That's not it, but
One of the airlines banned air tags.
The chat will know.
Because let us know in the chat what that is, because it was one of the airlines that banned air tags because people were saying they were like, hey, no, my bag is not in this city. I can see where it is. It's in Miami now. And they're like, well, wait a minute. We don't want you having this kind of power. So we're going to ban air tags on our flights because we don't want you knowing where your bags are. We'll put our foot down. So the point is, RFID technology, NFC, Bluetooth, any of these things, air tags, we can track this stuff. But you mean to tell me the U.S. military can't track all of these javelins and everything else that it has?
Well, in fact, CBS News tried to tell us just that with a documentary that they put together showing that only 30% of NATO weapons end up on the battlefield. CBS decided not to actually air that documentary after people dogpiled it on Twitter and said, how dare you say that? We still have the trailer, but that's about it. We were never able to see their reporting, but we'll show you the trailer.
In the past 2 months, we've moved weapons and equipment to Ukraine at record speed. Drones, grenade launchers, machine guns.
We're seeing this incredible, historic flow of weapons coming into Ukraine. Do we have any sense as to where they're going?
We don't know. There is really no information as to where they're going at all.
All this stuff goes to the border, and then kind of like something happens, it kind of like 30% maybe reaches its final destination.
30%? Are you concerned about weapons getting in the wrong hands?
I don't care at all whether that happens.
What sort of a unit do you command? Can't say. Okay.
There are like power lords, oligarchs, political players.
One of the biggest targets are convoys like this transporting weapons.
Возле мы ехали, только что въебали сюда, прямо в пост. За деревьями. Вот там парламент идет.
Yeah, and then they go into Lithuanian. You can see
This is a NATO
You can see the NATO exercises. You can see where these weapons are pouring in for years. And to frankly, to CBS's credit, you can actually watch the full documentary online, but they never aired it on television. They just got totally dogpiled after this report came out. Then CBS had to issue like a Twitter correction about it, and it was amazing. But they even said in the CBS documentary, this war has been going on since 2014.
Yes.
So to their credit, they've been talking about, hey, Ukraine has been attacking the Donbass since 2014 in violation of the Minsk agreements. So you can't talk about it. If you're in the mainstream media, you can't tell the truth like that.
No, they want you to think it started unprovokedly,
right?
If that's a word, in March of 2022.
Yeah, I don't think that's a word. But the past few weeks,
I think it is a word. Philip, is that a word? Unprovokedly. I guess you wouldn't need the "ly" because it's
unprovoked.
Yeah, I don't know. Unprovokedly would be the adverb version of it. I don't know.
Unprovokedliness.
Okay. You might not need that extra.
But there's a whole twist to this story, which is really fascinating, which is these drones. So now, over the past few weeks, a lot of concerns from Western media about Iran supplying kamikaze drones to Russia that are now being used in Ukraine. This video you're seeing right here is an Iranian drone show. So they were showing off these wares. This is about a year old, where they're walking through showing all the different drone technology. So obviously Iran is very deep into the drone building. So again, over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of concerns from Western media that, Iran is supplying kamikaze drones to Russia, that they're now being used in Ukraine.
There's something just so strange about men standing around weapons that will kill you wearing COVID masks.
Yes.
That I just can't abide while I'm watching this.
It's like, okay, he's like, okay, this one here. How many people will this kill? Okay. Make sure you're wearing your masks. Did you guys use some hand sanitizer before you came here to look at these weapons of mass destruction?
Yeah, I mean, we knew these things wouldn't age well while we were participating in the COVID theater, but okay, I'm sorry to derail.
Anyway, now there's just a little problem with these drones, which is, in the story, the Wall Street Journal is reporting today that there are quite a few Western components inside of these Iranian drones. Yes, U.S. parts and chips inside of Iran's drones.
You know what the U.S. has to do now is sanction itself.
Maybe they will. We'll see if that actually happens. According to the report from the Wall Street Journal, investigators found drones shot down by Ukraine's military contained pieces of Western-made hardware that guide and power these drones. Here's the actual, what you're seeing on your screen, is the actual Wall Street Journal headline. Notice the headline: Iranian drones in Ukraine project Tehran's power beyond the Mideast, testing U.S. and Europe. But that headline does not make any mention of the fact that these drones are largely built with U.S. parts.
No, they just kind of work it in, hoping that you read the article and you're like, the headline, like, I guess they suspect most people do, and be like, okay, got it. But then not actually look into who has culpability here.
No, not even in the first 2 paragraphs of this story do they mention the fact that these are made in large part by the United States. Listen, here's the lead of the Wall Street Journal article. Russia's expanding use of Iranian drones in Ukraine poses an increasing threat for the U.S. and European allies as Tehran attempts to project military power beyond the Middle East. In recent weeks, Ukrainian officials say Russia has launched more than 300 Iranian drones that have targeted military units, power plants, civilian buildings in the capital of Kiev. The Ukrainian military said it has shot down more than 70% of these drones. Yeah, but there's no mention of where these come from. How are they built? Upon further examination, this is where it gets really interesting. Here are the components inside of these drones that actually come from the United States. Take a look at this. All of these different pieces here, just look to the left of your screen. Microtechnology USA makes that piece. Here's the, I don't even know how to pronounce that. Kintex buys links in the United States, the field programmable gate array. And then up in the right-hand corner there, the 32-bit ARM Cortex MF4 controller by Texas Instruments. Where? In Texas. Oh, here's other devices, the transceiver by Analog Devices USA, the Halo Electronics USA. So look at all of these different parts made by U.S. companies. What's interesting is Richard Grinnell tweets, the Biden administration is giving Ukraine $19 billion when negotiating with the Iranian regime to give them billions of dollars. All the while, Iran supplies Russia with drones to attack Ukraine. Biden is officially on both sides of the Ukraine war. It reminds me of, was it The Last Jedi, the second in the Star Wars, the new revamped Star Wars?
Oh, the weapons makers.
The weapons makers. And he's like, look, they're on the side of the Empire. They're on the side of the rebels. These weapons manufacturers don't care. They're involved. They're making money on both sides of this.
Well,
right?
Portugal did that during World War II because they specifically wanted to be called neutral. So they already had existing relationships with Britain, long-standing relationships. And then when Germany came to buy Wolfram, which is what they made weapons out of, Portugal said, we have to sell to both sides or else we'll be dragged into this. We'll be shown as promoting one side or over the other. So they did that on purpose. The United States is not trying to show equality in any sense of the word. In fact, they're sanctioning anybody with a 10-foot pole that they can connect to Russia. So then these are easy connections to make. So then you have to censor yourself, or sanction, I'm sorry, is the word. Sanction yourself if you're going to, be consistent about it, which I know politicians don't have any interest in being consistent.
Well, the U.S. Treasury announced a few weeks ago that they were going to sanction any company involved and responsible for helping to produce Iranian drones. Here's the U.S. Department of Treasury. Treasury sanctions Iranian persons involved in production of unmanned aerial vehicles and weapons shipments to Russia. Really? That's interesting. So will you, in fact, then start sanctioning Texas Instruments? And clearly not, of course, because why would you do that? As part of Nancy Pelosi's CHIPS Act, Texas Instruments receives massive tax credits, right? So again, you have additional, you have Nancy Pelosi under the CHIPS Act with Texas Instruments receiving massive tax credits. You have a number of other companies, of course, NVIDIA and others taking advantage of these massive tax credits. I'm not saying NVIDIA is involved in this at all, this drone story, but Texas Instruments is, according to these reports. And so Congress can provide these tax credits to these companies under the CHIPS Act, while at the same time sanctioning other companies that are equally as culpable as these chip manufacturers and these parts manufacturers that are going on inside of these Iranian drones.
I mean, think of how far-reaching these sanctions have been, right? How an oligarch. Okay, let's take that. Even just last week, Ursula von der Leyen said, not only are we going to sanction Russian assets, we're working on actively seizing them. How do we know these people have anything to do with war? And so, again, if we can connect it with Russia, we're happy to punish in the West. Right. So then it has to cut both ways.
Well, and then think about all these members of Congress who make money off of these stock investments in these companies, right? You had Paul Pelosi making millions of dollars, dumping stocks right before certain, sanctions are announced, and making money off of NVIDIA. And then, of course, Nancy Pelosi flies to Taiwan to check in on her investments with PA Semiconductors, Taiwan Semiconductors. So again, they're all in bed together, these guys. And at the same time, you have the United States sending nuclear weapons now to Europe. So Russia says that the United States is lowering the nuclear threshold with new bombs arriving in Europe. Russia said on Saturday that the accelerated deployment of modernized U.S. B-61 tactical nuclear weapons at NATO bases in Europe would lower the nuclear threshold, and that Russia would take the move into account in its military planning operations. So Russia has about 2,000 tactical nuclear weapons, according to the report, and the United States has around 200. They're based in Italy, Germany, Turkey, Belgium, and the Netherlands. So I guess so much for peace talks. I don't know. But again, the hypocrisy around these Iranian drones is very, very interesting.